etc., etc. So actually to find out who is the best place to work, you have to look at it from a much more internal perspective. And that's what we've added in 2008. In 2008, we started with what we call the Best Place to Work survey, in which we've invited a number of companies to participate, in which we did a random engagement survey of about 20 different companies. And on the basis of a number of drivers to do with a sense of belonging, whether people are aligned with regards to the organizational strategy, their involvement, and whether they've got cross-functional cooperation, whether they've got opportunities to growth and whether they grow, whether there's a commitment to development of the team, whether they're allowed to take risk, leading to commitment, which is then driven by a number of satisfaction elements. This is what we call our engagement model, in which basically there are three components, primarily driven from the center of leadership. Three elements that drives commitment of employees. The company that came out number one on this study was actually GSK. The one that came out number two was Telenor. And the local company that came out on top was Engro Foods. Engro Foods is a very young company. It exists 3 years. And within 3 years, they have been able to engage their staff on such a level that certainly they were number 3 in the overall standings, that they were able to engage their staff to such a level that their team thought that their company was the best place to work. So on that basis, I think you've got 3 different companies that have been able to engage their staff in a way that they say, this is a company that I really want to live for, work for. So how do you get there? And what is employer branding? So let me take you a couple of slides with regards to what employer branding is and how you can become an employer of choice. The first part is, of course, to do with the employer brand. And it is what the company stands for. It's what the company is looking for and retains you. It's basically the image of the company through a current employee or somebody that you potentially try to hire. And what are the advantages of it? The first one, of course, is that you've got an enhanced corporate reputation. The second one is that actually you are being seen as a more attractive employer. Obviously, if you're most preferred employer, more people will come to you. As a result, and this is actually all statistics that are coming out of a global research. As a result, companies that are being seen as most preferred employer receive about 50% more applications that companies that are not being seen as a preferred employer. And as a result, have a much bigger choice in terms of talent. The second one is that if you're an employer of choice, you actually don't have to pay a premium to join a specific company. I promise you that KESC has to pay a significant premium in order for somebody to join them, correct? Unilever doesn't have to pay that premium. A huge cost saving with regards to, as a consequence of being an employer of choice. The third one is about higher commitment levels. Companies that are being seen as employer of choice have got significant higher commitment levels. And last but not least, of course, that translates into improved bottom line. So how do we get there? This is my standard consulting philosophy. First you discover, then you design, and then you deliver. So in employer brand, the discovery phase has got 3 things. First is that you really have to be very critical about what your organization stands for. Then you have to talk about what are employees looking for. And thirdly is about how you differentiate yourself. Yeah? So the first part is very much about what the organization stands for and then what employees find important. In this, I find this a very insightful graph, and maybe it's a little bit busy, but the reasons that employees join is primarily to do with the money they get and the opportunity they have. The reasons that they stay with you is for the people they work with and the organization they're cooperating in. Yeah? So you really have to make sure that you've got covered, not only about why they join, but also why they stay. And if you ask graduates, what is the most important factor for you to join an organization? Compensation in Pakistan comes in number 1 by far. This is for joining. Yeah? The second part is that they're looking for challenging and interesting work. And the third one is about future career opportunities. So if you want to develop an employer brand and an employer promise, this is what at least potential graduates are looking for. The third part is then that you have to differentiate yourself. And at one stage, I actually did a web search. These are all web portals, vacancy portals, career portals, of 6 different companies, global career portals. They look pretty the same, don't you? Do you know which company is which? I haven't got a clue. So they're actually from 6 different banks. One of them actually don't exist anymore, but otherwise 6 different banks portraying exactly the same imagery. So it doesn't differentiate at all. And later on, I will show you 1 or 2 examples of what I think is absolutely very impactful employer branding that really differentiate themselves in the market. So it's about knowing what your organization stands for. Second one is knowing what people are looking for. And the third one is knowing what your competition is doing. If you have discovered all these 3, then you can move into the design phase. And the design phase has again got 3 elements. First one is about, you have to then put all that information and translate it into an employer promise. And an employer promise is very much, this is a bit of a definition. Employer promise is the package of functional, economic and psychological benefits provided by employment and identified with the employing company. So this is basically 2 things. One, it's about what can an employee in your company expect by working for you. And secondly, what do you expect from that employee if he is part of your organization? That's the employer promise that you're looking for. The second part then is very much, and that's the most important part, is very much to make sure that whatever you do in HR is then aligned with that HR promise. If you promise people to pay top of the line remuneration, you can't then be cost effective on your benefits. If you say that you can provide people with work-life balance, you would not be able to push people to work on Sundays. So you have to make sure that your HR practices are aligned. And to prove that, these are some statistics. If you think about an ability of a company to deliver the employer promise, so these are companies that are not able to deliver their employer promise. These are companies that are able to deliver promise. In the first month after joining, the people that have got that are not able have got a low commitment level versus the people that are able to deliver it significantly. However, over time, the companies that are able to deliver their employer promise increases the commitment level of the employees, while obviously the people that are not able decreases that to 3%. And the likelihood of people leaving, of course, in people that are promising one thing and are not delivering on another thing is significant. And that's probably one of the reasons that we've certainly seen in the past, significant high turnover. And then, of course, you develop that into an employer brand. An employer brand is then the translation of your employer brand promise into something that is easy communicatable. The last part is then the delivery part. So you implement your employer promise in terms of your business practices, you talk to your employees, and you talk to the talent outside. Key in that is that you have to identify the most important channels that people listen to. And in our study, we actually found, and these are all different ways, different channels